but I really appreciate the right not to be tortured by a government who wants evidence. I realize it makes the jobs of the police and prosecutors more difficult, but I appreciate that right nonetheless. Don't you? Well, with Charles I and before, you had the Star Chamber. They could torture and maim you to get you to give evidence against yourself. These Puritans of the 1600s thought that was wrong. When Charles I was forced to reconvene Parliament, one of their first actions was to abolish the Star Chamber in 1641. They wrote the bill in such a way as to inject the principle of non-self-incrimination into both of our legal traditions. You may object and say that Jefferson and Locke were referring to the laws of nature or nature and nature's God, not the Christian God. I ask you, has there ever been a people who by merely observing nature have concluded that all men are created equal? To Jefferson and Locke it was self-evident. If we were to ask a pagan Roman or Greek, they would say the law of nature supports predation and slavery. They would say if we Romans are stronger than our neighbors, we will plunder their cities, take their women, and enslave their men. It is a law of nature. Is not the lion stronger than the antelope? So far as they were concerned, you may have some liberty as long as you are a Roman, but it was not at all self-evident to them that all men were created equal. Slavery was widespread in the world. The USA learned it from the Old World, and it persisted here until 1865. However, your God of the desert had much to say about slavery. In Deuteronomy chapter 23, God commands, "You shall not deliver unto his master a slave that is escaped from his master unto you. He shall dwell with you in the midst of you, in the place which he shall choose within one of your gates, where it pleases him best. You shall not oppress him." This means that it was wrong in ancient Israel to return a fugitive slave to his master. Paul, in his letter to Philemon, asks Philemon to do, quote, "that which is befitting," by granting Philemon's fugitive slave Onesimus his freedom. The abolitionist movement in the UK and the USA was largely made up of Christians who demanded that these pieces of scriptural truth be integrated into the Western legal tradition. It was self-evident to Member of Parliament William Wilberforce that all men were created equal, but the concept was not the least bit self-evident to our U.S. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney when he decided the Dred Scott case in 1857. It was self-evident that all men are created equal. Was it self-evident that all men are created equal to Nero, Genghis Khan, Joe Stalin, Mao Zedong, or Pol Pot? You see, Pat, there's a fundamental moral epistemological problem with observing nature. You cannot reason from is to ought. You can observe what is in nature. You can describe physical laws like the net force equals a derivative of momentum with respect to time, but that will never tell you that you ought to treat your neighbor as yourself. You may want to deny the effects of the Reformation and make appeal to the Enlightenment. You may want to credit this proliferation of liberty and rights to a secular Enlightenment rather than the Puritans and the Reformation. Jefferson was, after all, very much in the secular Enlightenment tradition. However, John Locke was Jefferson's mentor. And Locke said, quote, "The Holy Scripture is to me, and always will be, the constant guide of my ascent, and I will always hearken to it as containing the infallible truth relating to the things of highest concernment. Where I want the evidence of things, yet there is ground enough for me to believe, because God has said it, and I will presently condemn and quit any opinion of mine as soon as I am shown that it is contrary to any revelation in the Holy Scripture." See, John Locke had a high regard for Scripture and considered the Bible to be authoritative. If you have any further doubt that it is the Reformation and its effects that have secured us the blessings of liberty, consider the warning of Pope Martin V to the King of Poland. Martin V wanted to cling to the Middle Ages. He became Pope 1 year after the reformer John Huss was executed, some 100 years before Martin Luther started the Reformation in earnest. Martin V advises the King of Poland, quote, "Know that the interests of the Holy See and those of your crown make it a duty to exterminate the Hussites. Remember that these impious persons dare proclaim the principles of equality. They maintain that all Christians are brethren, and that God has not given to privileged men the right of ruling nations. They hold that Christ came on earth to abolish slavery. They call the people to liberty, that is, to the annihilation of kings and priests. While there is still time then, turn your force against Bohemia. Burn, massacre, make deserts everywhere, for nothing could be more agreeable to God or more useful to the cause of kings than the extermination of the Hussites. You see, Pope Martin V correctly saw that the Reformation of Christianity advocated by Wycliffe and Huss would undo the medieval world he so loved. Pat, you enjoy your liberty as a citizen of the UK, and you are rightly concerned about the threat radical Islam and political correctness pose to those liberties. However, in railing against Christianity, you're like the proverbial man who saws the tree limb out from under himself. It is the Christian God who blessed you with that liberty of that branch. Since you cannot reason from is to ought, it is God alone that supports that branch. He has blessed us with liberty, and it is my hope that he will bless you with much more than liberty. After all, Jesus said, "All that the Father gives me will come to me, and the one who comes to me I will certainly not cast out."